is going to be a ramble. I have nothing planned or prepared or written down. I'm just going to talk about my favorite games and my history with gaming. So, I first started playing video games when I was very, very young. I had 3 older siblings, 2 of which were boys, like me. So, they had video games. And I can remember playing Super Mario Brothers on the NES from a very, very young age. I was born in 1991, so I played many different generations, different consoles growing up, all the way up into the most modern and on PC. But the first video game I played was on NES and was probably Super Mario Brothers. It's definitely the one I remember the most. I was never very good at Super Mario Brothers. Like, I played that game a ton as a little kid, but I don't ever remember seeing World 3 or beyond World 3. I barely remember World 2. But I think this was mostly due to the fact that I was born with one hand. So on my left arm, I have the elbow, and about 5 or 6 inches past my elbow, and my arm just ends in a stump. So, anyone who's ever used an NES controller knows that it just has a D-pad that you would use with your left thumb, and 2 buttons you would press with your right thumb. But me as a little kid, I would be using my stump to move with the D-pad, and was never very good at that. I would hold the controller against my left leg, which is something I still do to this day when I play. I'll hold the controller against my left leg. My right hand can push all the buttons that your right hand pushes. And nowadays, my left arm will use, a thumbstick, a joystick of some kind, which is much easier to move with than a D-pad. At least for me. But back then, I had to use a D-pad and then just the 2 buttons for Mario, for example. And I was never very good at all at, any video games as a kid. But my brothers liked them, my cousins, my friends, and I always played, and was just always not very good. I remember playing Nintendo 64 a little bit, a very little bit. For anyone who doesn't know, that controller is very big and has a lot of buttons, but it also has 3 handles. It has one in the middle with another extra thumbstick on it, and basically sometimes when you're playing you would hold the outer 2, sometimes you would hold the 2 left ones, and sometimes you would hold the 2 right ones. But for someone like me who only had one hand, that controller was very, very difficult to use. Some of the buttons just in spots that I couldn't really get to or reach very easily, so I didn't play very many Nintendo 64 games. But I remember a babysitter that I had. My mom would leave us younger kids with this woman, and she had I don't know if he was her husband or her boyfriend, and a couple little kids of her own. And the man, whether he was her husband or boyfriend, I don't remember, would be playing Zelda Ocarina of Time on Nintendo 64. And I was the oldest of all of the kids there by a couple of years, because she was only dropping the younger kids off. But he had a guidebook to walk through the entire game. And basically I would watch him play and help him and read the guidebook whenever he got stuck. And mind you, this wasn't while the game was new or the console was new. This was a few years after this game and console had come out. I don't even know how many years, but I mean, this was in the early 2000s that this was happening. Maybe 2004, 2005. So when I was like 12, 13 years old. So I've never played Ocarina of Time myself, but I did, watch him play through it. And I did play the earliest Zelda games on Nintendo. The ones that are more like a sort of top-down style game. But again, was never very good. Early video games like that, in my opinion, were always very confusing. Tough to figure out what exactly you're doing, where you're supposed to go at times, and never really had a very good save game system, or a save game system at all, kind of designed to be beaten in one playthrough. And so, or like some early games, you would get a code at certain points so that when you came back to the game you could put that code in, but little kid me, I would never write those codes down or remember them or anything, so I would always start again from the beginning. But I have played like Breath of the Wild, more modern Zelda games, which I really enjoyed on the Switch, and more modern Mario games that I am much better at now. But to get on to, some of my favorite games, one of the earliest games that I really, really liked and spent a lot of time playing was on the Sega Dreamcast. My one older brother got a Sega Dreamcast, and he only had a couple of games for it, but one of them was called Seventh Cross Evolution. I don't know if anybody watching this has ever heard of or played this game. It was such a hard and confusing game. I spent so many hours playing this game as a little kid, and I never knew what I was doing or what was going on or what I was supposed to do. Basically, you start out in this little pond as this little like slugfish thing, and you swim around and you collect these little orbs and you level up and you evolve and you start attacking and killing smaller creatures to evolve and get more points and stuff. Then you can go up to this red thing and like evolve. It had this weird sort of like pixel art board, and you would like color it in with different colors, and then this would give you some sort of evolution that you could then put on your creature to get yourself bigger and level you up and eventually get legs to crawl out of the water and all this stuff. But like, I don't think I ever made it out of that initial starting pond. It was such a confusing, weird game, but I don't know, I loved it and I played it all the time. I think I just liked swimming around and killing things, and then, oh look, now I've got bigger flippers, and oh, now I've got little crab legs. I don't know. I really enjoyed playing it. A similar game to this in terms of, I spent hours and hours playing it as a kid, but never really progressed or knew what to do. It's a game called Echo. Echo spelled E-C-C-O, about a dolphin. You're a little dolphin swimming around. And I'm not joking. I probably spent like 20 hours playing that game before I even realized how to get out of the starting area. Because you start out and you're kind of just in a small area. There's nowhere really to go, if I'm remembering correctly. But you can swim around, and if you swim straight up fast, you'll jump up out of the water. But what I never did and never realized is, if you do that and like get to the maximum speed and swim up, you'll jump really high up out of the water. And then that's how you get, out of basically like the start screen and into the game. And then from there you actually have like little levels to go through and things that can attack you and hurt you. But I spent hours and hours just swimming around that empty space in the beginning, jumping out of the water, doing flips, having fun, and having no idea what was going on. So, yeah, as a kid, there were a ton of games I played a lot that I really didn't understand what was happening, and just sort of played the same level or the same area over and over and over without knowing was going on. And then I started getting into playing like multiplayer games with my brothers and friends and stuff later on in like the PlayStation 2, Xbox 360 era. You know, I played a ton of like Call of Duty games. Gears of War I played a lot. Halo I played a ton. Now I had a PlayStation 2 growing up. I never really had an Xbox at first, so I never really played or knew anything about Halo for a long time. Until a friend of mine had a LAN party. And if you don't know what that is, that's where a bunch of people get together and play multiplayer games in the same room by connecting a bunch of consoles together. And he had one for Halo, and I had never played Halo. I think it was Halo 2 at this time. And so I came over, and a bunch of my friends there, and we played, and I really enjoyed it. But, you know, they all had Xboxes, and I had a PlayStation. And then my older brothers at the time also had Xbox. They were living with my dad in a different state, and I lived with my mom. So, I wound up getting an Xbox 360 and starting to play all these multiplayer games with my friends and my brothers. And I really got big into playing first-person shooter games like Halo, Call of Duty, Battlefield. I played more Battlefield more recently. I never really played Battlefield 3 or the Bad Company games. I did like go back and play them and really enjoyed them, but never even really played much of Battlefield 4 while it was popular. Because at the time I was playing the Call of Duty, Halo, and Gears of War games. But then I did start really getting into Battlefield around like Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5. Also played 2042, although I didn't like it as much. But I did play a ton of first-person shooters. I don't play them as much nowadays. I don't know, I don't enjoy them as much anymore. Not as fun, you know. As a kid in high school, I'd go to school, come home, and just play, you know, play Call of Duty all day or play Halo all day. And so I would spend hours playing these games and, you know, really perfecting them. But nowadays I have my job. I have, you know, there's movies I want to watch, TV shows I want to watch, books I want to read. There are events I have to go to, parties. You know, my sister's wedding recently I had to go to. And there are tons of other games that I want to play. There are single-player games I want to play and co-op games and all these things. And so I don't have time to spend 30 hours a week playing Call of Duty. So if I launch a Call of Duty game, I just get beat. I don't know the maps as well. I don't know which guns are good to use. I don't know, you know, where to hold this lane or this objective from, and it just seems to me like most players that play the game do know these things, and I'm kind of fighting an uphill battle. Now, I'm still pretty okay at first-person shooter games, but like back in the day in Call of Duty games, Halo games, I was really, really good at them, and really enjoyed playing them, and it's just not as much fun when you're dying a lot, you know? So, anyway, one of my favorite video game franchises is the Hellblade games. The first one is called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, and this was a game that I knew absolutely nothing about, and I don't remember why I ever even heard about it or learned about it, but I bought it and downloaded it and played it one day, and I absolutely loved it. If any of you don't know, this game, you control a young girl, well, a young woman, in sort of like the time of North mythology, so, or Norse, not North, Norse mythology, whatever, Norse mythology. So you're a young woman, sort of somewhere in like Norway or Sweden or wherever. about like the Vikings, and she's got like a darkness about her or something wrong with her, so she's kind of shunned. She was kept in. But she met this guy, and they fell in love, and he was killed. And so the point of the first game is she's traveling into the underworld to kill Hell and bring him back. And so, but the main draw of the game for me when I was first playing it is that she has all of these voices in her head. So while you're playing and controlling her, you're constantly hearing, 3, 4, 5 different voices talking over each other, sometimes overlapping, but it's filmed with a binaural microphone. So these voices that you're hearing are going from the left ear to the right ear, and one voice is always way over here, and one voice is always over here. And it's cool because the game is really focusing on, those sort of feelings of having all these negative voices in your head, and feeling depressed, and feeling, having voices telling you horrible things about yourself, and I believe touching on like schizophrenia and things like that. And it's very well done. The sound is amazing. I have only ever played the Hellblade games with a headset on, because how can you not? With the binaural sound like that, it's amazing. I do know a ton of people aren't fans of the games because they do kind of seem at points more like an interactive movie or like a walking simulator where there's not really a whole lot going on and you're just kind of following along a set path and pressing certain buttons at certain times. But I mean, I think that's okay, if a game is as well made as the Hellblade games are. They're beautiful. Graphics are absolutely stunning. What that game company is doing is really pushing the limits with graphics and sound quality and all these things, and the overall story is incredible. There are only 2 games in the series at this point. The second one just came out. It's called Hellblade 2: Senua's Saga. I had it pre-ordered, played it the day it came out. Absolutely incredible games, both of them. They've got some, like, puzzle-solving elements. They've got some parts with fight scenes, but it's not very complicated system of fighting. You're sword fighting, but, like, tends to be one-on-one, and when you kill that enemy, another one comes. Or at times, there will be, like, 2 or 3. So you gotta kind of fight one and dodge the others until you kill one. But the type of game where, like, you know exactly when they're gonna attack, so you just have to time it to dodge it or to block it, and you know whether you can block it or whether you have to dodge it. So not very complicated. Not an extremely difficult game, but it can be tough, and it does have, different difficulty settings, as well as a setting where it can make itself more difficult or easier depending on how much you are dying. So, anyway, I absolutely love these games. I think anybody that likes ASMR and likes video games would absolutely love these games and love to check them out. The first game, just the opening scene of the first game, when I first got it and installed it and played it, that was enough to have me completely hooked on the entire series, no matter how many games they make in this series. It's incredible. You're just a woman rowing a boat down this creek, and you're not controlling it. This is an opening cutscene, but she's rowing this little boat down this little creek, and you're seeing all this stuff pop up, the credits for who made the game and all these different things. And meanwhile, all you're hearing, besides all the ambience and the water and the stuff like that, is the different voices in your head that are talking and going back and forth. And it just sounds amazing. It's the very first time a video game ever triggered my ASMR. And now I'm not saying the whole games, all of them, all the way, or both of them, all the way ASMR because there are the action scenes and the fighting scenes. There are parts where it gets, loud like a video game, but that opening sequence of the very first game is incredible. And all throughout both games, you do get all the different voices talking in your head, going back and forth. And it's always amazing. I absolutely love those games. I hope they continue making them and don't just stop at 2. I like them so much that I've been looking into the company at what else they're making. They've got a couple of other games that they've been working on that aren't out yet that I do plan on at least checking out once they're out or closer to being out, and hoping they're really good. Because I can't talk enough about how much I love the Hellblade games. Okay. Another game series that I absolutely love and wish they would make more, but at this point I doubt they will, is Portal. I love both of the Portal games so much. I absolutely love those sort of puzzle-solving games, and I love the whole co-op campaign in Portal 2, and how Portal 2 basically had 2 different campaigns, because it had the whole single-player mode, an entirely different co-op campaign to play. I also love how the game had user-created levels, so you could download levels other people have made and play them and keep playing. But I just wish they would make an official Portal 3. It would, it would do well. Everybody loves the Portal games. I would play it. I'd buy it and play it in a heartbeat. I would absolutely love that. I think it's just such a great system, a very simple style of puzzle solving, using portals to get yourself around and move objects and push buttons to open doors. But then it just keeps progressing and ramping up and getting more difficult as each puzzle goes on, and they slowly add more and more elements and more different things, and they don't have an exact tutorial explaining this is how this works, but they'll just introduce it in a way that, okay, the first time I see this new element, it's very easy to figure out what to do and what you need to do. And then the next time it's a bit more complex and a bit more complex. A very, very great game design of ramping up the difficulty and not just throwing too much at you, but also not having a long, boring, unnecessary tutorial explaining in excruciating detail what to do. It flows really well. It's engaging. The entire game is funny. The story is interesting. There's almost nothing negative to say about the Portal series. And I believe Portal might be the first puzzle game like that I played. And I've since played tons of games in similar styles. Absolutely love those sort of, puzzle solving games, or co-op. You have to work with your partner to solve the puzzles, and or room escape style games. I love those too. Another series I've played in its entirety and hope they keep making more is the We Were Here series. My brother and I have played through every single We Were Here game. All of them. If anyone's unfamiliar, We Were Here is a 2-player co-op game where the 2 players tend to not be together in the same area at the same time, but have to relay information back and forth to solve the puzzles and progress through the levels. So I may see a chessboard with pieces on it, and my brother may be somewhere over here with a little video reel watching the chess game and telling me which pieces to move and where and when, so that I can progress through this chess game to open the door and move forward. Or maybe I have a board that has a bunch of plans on it with a bunch of random letters underneath them, and then he has a board that has a bunch of letters, the same random letters I have, but with some other piece of information, maybe a color underneath them. So I have to say, okay, I need, what color is this plant? Okay, this plant is XY. So I have to ask him what color is XY, and he has to look at his board to tell me. But meanwhile, there's some whole other thing going on where he needs to ask me information that I need to be telling him at the same time. And I really love that whole We Were Here series. Again, I think it's not too difficult, not hard enough where we're having to Google stuff or look up the answers or find a guide. We've been able to solve everything by ourselves, but not so simple that you're just walking through, definitely some of the puzzles we had to sort of sit there and try and fail and figure out what we had to do. But I do love the way, it would separate you but make you work together. So some co-op puzzle games, like even Portal 2, and a lot of Portal 2, you guys are together, and so you could just have one person completely solve the level and the other person just follow them, which could be less fun and less engaging at times. So the series We Were Here, where most of the time, you two both have to be doing something, and you both have to be figuring something out in order to get through it. Absolutely love that sort of thing. Also really enjoy the game. Keep talking and nobody explodes. This is a game where one player is defusing a bomb on their screen, and the other player isn't even playing a video game. They're just looking at a book and walking you through what to do. And so, obviously you guys can't see what the others can see. So, you would have to explain what module on the bomb you need to defuse what it looks like. And the other person has to find that section of the book and tell you what to do. But then they've made all of the modules and puzzles and stuff intentionally confusing so that if you're trying to be too fast, you could end up being confusing, giving the wrong information and making a mistake. And of course, you're defusing a bomb that has a timer on it, so you are trying to be fast. So it's a really, really fun game. My brother and I have played a lot. We tend to play it where he is defusing the bomb and I'm reading the book. We've only done it the other way around a couple of times. But I absolutely love these sort of puzzle-solving games, especially the ones where the two players are separated in some way like that. Another game like that is Operation Tango. Operation Tango is like a spy puzzle game where one player is an agent actually in the field going through, infiltrating a building or whatever. And the other player is like a hacker who is hacking into the system and unlocking things and disabling things to help the other one through. And the two of you have to work together, of course, to get through the level and get to your targets, and then move on to the next level. My brother and I have played through that game once. I was the agent in the field, he was the hacker. We do plan on at some point going back in and playing it the other way around, where I'm the hacker and he's the agent in the field. But again, absolutely love these type of games. I wish there were more of them. There are more similar ones I've played, but I love sort of co-op puzzle solving games like that, especially ones where the two players are separated working together. I think it's a great genre, super fun. My brother and I both, we love puzzle solving. We love anything to do with puzzle solving, and having to work together and figure out what you're doing. And I do hope that we can find many more games like this to play in the future, because they really are a ton of fun. Another video game series that I really love and have played every game in is the Metro series, starting with Metro 2033. I like the Metro series so much that I've played each of the games multiple times. Like the first two, they remastered them on the next generation of consoles, and I got them again and played them again. The came out after that. And I do believe they have plans of making more, but I'm not sure about that. I know they currently have a VR Metro game coming out that's sort of a spin-off of the original story and made by a different developer. But I'm not into VR gaming, so I don't really care much about that. But like on the company's website, they have a sort of roadmap, and it just kind of, it doesn't say definitively whether there's another one or not. It just kind of leaves it open, so it seems to me like they might be planning on or working on another one, but just don't want to say anything until, they have more, until they're closer or something like that. But the Metro games are based off of books of the same name. Metro 2033 is the first book in the series. And the book is originally written in Russian, but they have been translated to English. I own them. I've only read the first book so far, but this story is about a man named Artyom who lives in the underground railroad system in Moscow in Russia, which they call the Metro, hence the title. And they live down there because in this story, the world has been destroyed by nuclear warfare. Basically, I believe what has happened is, like World War II ended, then there was the Cold War. And basically in this story, the Cold War didn't end the way it did in real life, but instead, with an all-out nuclear war happening across the entire globe. And essentially everybody on the planet has died, except for the people that made it into the metro system in Moscow when the bombings were started. Apparently that was the only place where people were able to survive. And so, you're playing as this Artyom guy in these tunnel systems, and you have to go and deliver a message, but there are all these mutated creatures that are attacking, as well as there being different factions of humans down in the metro system, so they're often at war. So you have human enemies with guns you have to fight against. You have, like I said, the mutated creatures that you have to fight against. And you have, a bit of a survival element to the game in that, and other different modes to play on, but I enjoy a challenge, so I played on the mode where ammo is more scarce and health is harder to come by, and so you're constantly trying to scour and find any ammo you can and having to swap out your weapons for the ones the enemies are using because you can't find any more ammo for the gun you want and things like this, and it's very difficult. And the whole game is incredibly dark since you're in tunnels underground, and then you have a flashlight, but the flashlight's constantly dying, so you have this device that you have to crank to charge up your flashlight. So every once in a while, as your flashlight's getting dimmer and dimmer, you gotta stop and pause and pull this thing out and crank it up, and then maybe the mask that you're wearing will get dirty or wet, and you gotta press a button to wipe your mask off to help you see, and then you're wearing a mask to filter the air to breathe. But you gotta keep your eye on the timer and swap out your filters and make sure you find more filters, because if you run out, you'll suffocate and die. And it's a first-person game. It's basically a first-person shooter, but there are definitely horror elements, parts that are scary. Like I said, it's very dark. There's a lot of stealth to it as well. Every time you're by a bunch of human enemies, you can go in guns blazing, fighting, shooting them, just killing everybody to get through, or you can sneak around and quietly take some people out and kill them and get through, or you can just sneak around and kill nobody. And one of the things that I really like about it is it's one of the type of games that has a karma system where each game has 2 different endings. And if you go through the game, making the right decisions and being good and not killing people that don't need to die, you'll get the good ending. But if you go through and you massacre everybody and you innocent people or don't help people, you'll get the bad ending. And the thing I find weird about that is that since it's a series of 3 games, one of the 2 endings is the right one and one of them is the wrong one each time. And so, spoiler alert, the bad ending is the right one, usually. Well, I guess it depends on what you consider the good and bad ending in the second game. But yeah, the first game, the bad ending is the right one, and the good ending is the wrong one. And then in the second game, I don't really want to spoil it, but I don't want to spoil anything, but in the second game, what I would consider to be the good ending is actually the bad one. But again, I guess it depends on what you consider good or bad. And then the third one, I think, is a similar thing. If you get the good ending, though, I think in the third one, the good ending is the right one in terms of the story. And then the bad ending in the third one would be the wrong one. But yeah, I think the games are really cool. A ton of different style of enemies with the mutants, and many different kind of mutants, and the different human enemies and stuff. And the guns in the game are really cool because, because these people have been living underground for years, you have weaponry that's a bit older. And then you have like some makeshift weapons. Like there's a weapon that's air powered and it shoots like ball bearings. And so you have to like crank it to charge up the air pressure to shoot it. But then you also have, there's like an AK in the game, other Russian weapons from around the same time period. And tons of different sort of like homemade modifications on the weapons in the game. And then in the third game, they added another cool element where your weapons will get dirty and you have to like clean them to keep them functioning well. And the third one, again, I don't really want to spoil anything. The third one's very different from the first 2, but also very similar. It is made, I think, by the same people, although it is possible that like a different company bought the franchise and then made the third one. Like I'm not positive on that front. But the third one does have some huge differences from the first 2. And it's a much newer game than the first 2, so that adds to the differences a lot too. But like I said, I do think they are working on another one besides that VR one. And I hope so. And I did also really enjoy the book and look forward to reading the second and third books eventually. I'm just not reading the second one right this second. But I do like the story. I love the whole idea of it. And yeah, I do hope they make more of the games. So, another video game franchise I played a lot of that I haven't mentioned yet, that's another first-person shooter, is Rainbow Six. I first played Rainbow Six Vegas. That was the first one I ever played. I played Vegas and then Vegas 2. And I played both. I played the campaigns, loved them, played them multiple times, beat them on every difficulty. Played a lot of the multiplayer, really enjoyed it. I made some really cool friends playing Vegas 2 multiplayer. I really enjoyed those games. The customization, you can do all of it. You completely customize your multiplayer characters. Do some really ridiculous, crazy things. I mean, those games were super fun. But then after Rainbow Six Vegas 2, there wasn't really a new one that came out for a while. But I went back and played all of the old ones. So I've played every single Rainbow Six game that has been made. Although I started with Vegas and then went back to the older ones. But then, years ago now, Rainbow Six Siege came out. And I really enjoyed it and played it a lot, although it did not have a single player campaign or anything like that. Rainbow Six Siege, which was okay, but, again, I'm not gonna sit there and play one, multiplayer first-person shooter game over the course of like 6 years or however long it's been now. So I played it a lot in the first couple years it was out and haven't really played it since. But I remember before Siege came out, they were talking about the new Rainbow Six game they were developing. And if I remember correctly, it was called Rainbow Six Patriots. And they had released a really early on, section of gameplay from the campaign. But then unfortunately they completely scrapped that game and wound up making Rainbow Six Siege instead. And again, I liked Siege, I enjoyed it, I played it a lot, I had a lot of fun with it. But I do miss that game that got scrapped, that never did come out. I wish that game hadn't been made. I believe there was some backlash because in part of the footage that they released, you play as the terrorist. Well, sort of. You don't play as the terrorist, but you're an innocent civilian who's grabbed by the terrorist and forced to join in on their plot to the threat of your family. So, part of the game, you're like a guy with a bomb strapped to you going to blow up a bunch of people. And then it cuts over to the Rainbow Six team interjecting and stopping you. And then they don't have time, so the only way to save all the people is to kill the one innocent person with the bomb on him by throwing him off of a bridge. And I guess there were people who saw this and thought it was too dark and too messed up to release as a video game, and so they got some backlash and scrapped it. At least that's what I remember hearing at the time. I don't know if that's necessarily why they scrapped the project or not, but I don't know, I thought it was cool, I thought it looked great, I think just because a book or a movie or a TV show or a video game centers around serious subject matter or something doesn't mean it needs to be banned or stopped or protested against or anything. If you don't want to read it or see it or play it, then don't. And if you don't, if you're a parent and you don't want your children experiencing it, then don't get it for them. But I don't see why you would stop other people from playing it, And it's not like this game was glorifying being a terrorist. It was still very clear that the good guys were the guys stopping the terrorists, but whatever. But even so, I know there's a game series called Postal, where the whole point of the game is you're just a guy that has snapped and is going on a killing spree and killing innocent people. I don't play those games, I never have. Not something that I would enjoy, but I would never protest against them or say they should be banned. If other people want to play them, then so what? I don't believe it's going to lead people to do that in real life. It's just an escape. It's just a stupid, silly game to play. Or I've played the Grand Theft Auto games, and there have been times in Grand Theft Auto games, and pretty much every one, where I would just run around killing people, running from the cops, just causing mayhem, killing all kinds of innocent people. But it's not real. It's a game. It's fake. I don't understand why people get so worked up or upset over it. You don't have to play it. And you don't need to buy the game for your kids, so let them play it. But there's no reason to stop other people from doing whatever. It's not real. And it definitely does not. I don't think video games lead to real world violence at all. I don't think movies do. I don't think music does. I think it's ridiculous to think that. I think that someone that does turn to real world violence didn't do it simply because of a video game or a movie or TV show. I think it's much more deep rooted than that. But anyway. So, I really wish that Rainbow Six Patriots game had come out. But it didn't. But I do hope that they don't stop at Siege. I know it's a Ubisoft title right now. But I hope they make a new Rainbow Six game at some point. And I hope it does have a full-on campaign, and I hope it's co-op too. I would love a brand new co-op Rainbow Six game. I think that would be incredible if a new one of those would come out. I do hope they make one. Another series that I'm playing now, that I'm just playing the first game in the series now, but I do own 3 games in the series. And these are games that came out a long time ago, but on PC. And I'm not a huge PC gamer. I do play some PC games, but, since I've got one hand, I find it difficult to use a mouse and keyboard, so I don't play too many PC games, but they were ported over to console recently, and this is the Stalker series. So I'm playing the first original Stalker game now, and there's a brand new one coming out soon that will also come out on Xbox. I plan on getting and playing that one too, but I gotta finish these other ones first. But they're sort of similar to the Metro series in that they take place in Russia after, a nuclear war has decimated at least, the area of Russia that you're in. I don't know all of the lore of the game, if it's like decimated the whole world or not, but so you're in Russia. You're not in the Metro in this game though, you're out on the surface, but there are like pockets of radiation you gotta avoid. There are mutated creatures and things. There are enemy factions with guns you gotta fight against, and there are also anomalies. And these anomalies are these weird little things that they each do their own separate thing. There are ones that, like, you get close to them and they just burst into flames and they'll burn you. There are ones that you get close to them and it's just like a giant lightning strike that'll zap you and damage you. There are ones that, like, will just lift you up into the air and basically explode you. I think it's just like air pressure, like it picks you up and then it crushes you in the air. But there are tons and tons of them, and one of the cool mechanics in the game is you can throw like a bolt, so you can sort of see a little weird shimmering effect, or like the lightning one. I mean, you can see the lightning effect on the ground, like electric effect on the ground, to know where it is, but sometimes you might just see like a shimmer or like a weird sort of floating orb, and you can throw one of these bolts at it and it will set off the anomaly, and then you can see from a safe distance what it does, and like, okay, I need to avoid that, and you can kind of map out the area to go to by throwing the bolts and seeing where it will trigger it and where it won't, to know where it's safe to walk through. And I remember when I first started playing it, I didn't realize that's what the bolts were for. I thought you threw them as like a stealth mechanic to like distract the enemies, and then you could sneak by them. And I was really trying to do a lot of like stealthing through the game at first, but I would throw these bolts and it just wouldn't work. Either it wouldn't distract them at all, or they would immediately turn to me and shoot me. And I was really not understanding it until, I don't know, I just suddenly realized, oh, these are for the anomalies, it's not a stealth mechanic. And I was just basically playing the game wrong. But I'm really enjoying the series so far. It's difficult. I'm playing on the hardest difficulty, and I find it to be very difficult. There are times where it's just you against tons of enemies, and I keep running out of ammo, having to scrounge for more ammo and more guns, but the enemies don't drop a lot of ammo when you kill them. And also, like, on this hard difficulty, it's tough to kill the enemies. They all have armor, so you really gotta get headshots, but it can be tough to aim, and they kill you so quick when you like turn a corner and there's just a guy there waiting for you. And I'm always really low on healing items because I have to keep using them, but then again, the dead bodies don't leave that much healing items behind sometimes, and like, I find myself having to make very slow progress, kill a couple of enemies, move up a little bit, save the game, kill a couple enemies, move up a little bit, save the game, because otherwise, on this hardest difficulty, I'm really struggling to get through. So, like, I do wish it wasn't as hard as it is, and I know I could lower the difficulty, but one thing about me with video games is I love to 100% games. I love whenever I see that, I figure, why start on the easiest and make it harder? Why not start out on the hardest difficulty? So that's what I always do. So, playing through this game blind, not knowing too much about it on the hardest difficulty, and it's very, very tough. And honestly, I think the hardest part for me is just running out of ammo and healing items and things. Like, I think the game could be as hard as it is, but not be so difficult to find the ammo and things you need, because, you know, there are people in the game you can trade with and places where you can buy ammo and stock up and stuff, but at least in my experience, and maybe I'm playing the game wrong, but like, I don't tend to make it back to those areas often enough for it to matter. Like, I'm currently in this quest where I had to go here and do this, then go here and do this, then go here and do this. So rather than backtrack all the way back to the bar where I have ammo stockpiled and a guy I can trade with for more ammo, I just continue on to the next part and the next part, because it never leads me back to that bar area. And yeah, maybe I could have, like I said, tracked back to the bar, then come back to the next section, but I never know how much longer it's going to be before I finish this quest and end up back at the bar anyway, and don't really want to waste my time, so I just keep going along with the current quest, and I feel like it's all just one quest, right? So I shouldn't have to stop in the middle of a quest and go back to the bar area to stock back up. I should be able to get all the way through one quest at least, and the fact that I sometimes can't is just annoying. Like, to me, that's not added difficulty, that's just added annoyance. Like, maybe I'm at a section, like the section I'm at now, I have tons of ammo for my pistol, but it's really, really hard to get through all of these heavily armored enemies with very very powerful weapons, and all I've got is a pistol. It can be very difficult. So, like, why can't I just find more ammo? I find that very annoying. But otherwise, I really love it, and I know if I was playing on an easier difficulty, it would be way more enjoyable. Like, I do really, really enjoy the game and the gameplay, and I like a lot of stuff about the Stalker games. I think that they were way ahead of their time. I know they're older games, but like, it's an open world game, tons of looting, like, there are tons of different characters you interact with, and not all of them are bad, some of them are friendly, but you can help them out and then they'll become even more friendly towards you, or you can just not help them out and they'll stay neutral, or you can just go crazy and kill whoever you want. And yeah, you can kill them and loot their body, but like, it may piss off their other friends, especially if they see you do it, but you can just go around. You can go around killing everybody if you want, but then that's just going to make the game even more difficult, so. But I do think that's cool. I think that's a really cool mechanic they have in the game where, different characters will remember the things you've done for them, and the more you help them, the more friendly they become, and different things like that. And there's all these different factions in it, all this different information that you're learning the whole time you're playing. There's a whole, like, encyclopedia within the game that you can just go to and read up about all the different factions, all the different enemy types, all the different lore, the different weapons and things. And I don't know, I think it's really cool. And obviously I really love the whole idea of, like, post-nuclear warfare, Russia, and mutants and anomalies and stuff, because two of the series I talked about here involve that. And those aren't even the only two series I've played that are taking place in this setting. There have been others as well, so I just find it really cool, really interesting. Also in Stalker, you can, like these anomalies, you can find, like, ones that you can pick up and attach to your belt, and they give different effects. So some of them are beneficial, some of them, like, they're beneficial, but they're also constantly giving off radiation. So if you're wearing them, you have to keep taking anti-radiation medication